Let's see. This is from the Daily Telegraph via MSN. Headline, removing Maduro was the easy part. Trump's true test will come next. This is from Daniel De Petris writing in the Telegraph. Thursday, January 2nd, Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro gave an interview and stated outright he was willing to negotiate with the United States on the issue of drug trafficking. President Trump's answer came back about 24 hours later. We have nothing to negotiate about. So he was just bullshitting. Ever since the Trump administration began striking drug boats off the Venezuelan coast in early September and seizing several Venezuelan oil tankers in December, there was always this lingering question about what Trump's ultimate aim was. After all, there was a time not so long ago when Trump dispatched one of his envoys, Richard Grenell, to Caracas to negotiate with Maduro over everything from American prisoner releases to possible energy deals. Trump himself had a phone call with Maduro in November where he reportedly requested the Venezuelans' resignation. There was speculation both inside Trump's MAGA base, as well as by foreign policy analysts more broadly, about whether Trump's saber-rattling was merely a tactic to get Maduro to concede or a prelude to a wide-ranging military campaign. Whatever the case, the fundamental question, how far Trump is willing to go, has been solved. The U.S. airstrikes on multiple Venezuelan military facilities in the dead of night, as well as the successful capture of Maduro and his wife by U.S. Special Operations Forces inside the country, is nothing short of an immense tactical achievement by the president. As far as we can tell, the U.S. operation went as smoothly as one could expect. At the time of writing, Maduro is now being flown out of the country and will likely stand trial in a U.S. courtroom for a variety of narco-terrorism charges that U.S. prosecutors have levied against him. If Panamanian dictator Manuel Noriega was still alive today, he'd be having flashbacks right now. I saw something interesting. Noriega, I believe, was deposed back in 1990. And so and it was on the same day, over 30 years ago. So almost to the day, we've had the deposing of two different Central American dictators. First being Panama's Manuel Noriega, and then the other one, today, Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Rather interesting, the way history sometimes repeats, sometimes rhymes. That sort of thing. Hariki Sukio, welcome in. Lord, I'm so happy, what a good day. Yeah, you know what? It's a pretty good day. For the West, for the United States in particular, not too bad. First take the oil, then the government, so you have your scapegoat. Oh, I suppose it's one way to do it. Makes more sense why they took the oil, exactly. Young men fighting old people's disagreements. Yeah, something to that effect. Let's see. Tactical achievements, however, don't always translate into strategic success. There's a lot we don't know in these early hours, including whether Maduro's entire regime will eventually come tumbling down, and how involved the United States will be in a post-Maduro Venezuela. Well, we do know they're going to be rather heavily involved. They're going to be managing, the United States will be managing who does and who does not get to purchase oil, which means that's something that they can hang over the heads of the Chinese, who were buying a lot of their oil from Venezuela. And they were doing it in the Chinese yuan renminbi, their native currency, rather than in the petrodollar. So, a bit of leverage that we now have over the Chinese. I mean, it would make sense. Lurking from shadows, but wish you a good stream. Hello, Ray Idol. Welcome in. And so far, it seems that the people are celebrating. I do want to let me go through some bookmarks here. Let's see. Where did I have that? Here we go. There's a bit of celebration going on.
Muchos años esperando esta pronta libertad, que todavía, bueno, pero por lo menos estamos saliendo de una de las peores ratas de Venezuela. Gracias al gobierno de Trump por esta libertad que nos está brindando. De alguna manera se convierte, junto a Edmundo González y a María Corina Machado, en los libertadores de Venezuela.
Esto es algo que no sé cómo explicarlo, o sea, es una emoción.
No.
Muchos años.
Unfortunately, we don't have any translations available as far as what they're saying, but I think we get the gist of it. Even if a lot of us no habla español, I think translating into Inglés, it would appear that they're a rather happy lot today, seeing that Maduro is gone. Also, I'm seeing those tabs. Holy hell, they did double in. They did, unfortunately. But we'll try and close out as many as we can. I may just have to force close a lot of them before long, because I don't know if I'm ever going to get to some of these. Also, to translate, they're basically thanking the president for overthrowing the Venezuelan president, giving hope for Venezuela. I see. Okay, well, thank you for that, Angel Rose. Thank you. Let's see. This one from Melissa Tate. For all the folks wringing their hands in the fake moral outrage over President Trump's action on Maduro, you have zero understanding of the geopolitical significance for this action, for not just Venezuela, but from Western civilization. Let this particular Venezuelan educate you. Let's see. Let's see what this chap has to say.
Okay. As a Venezuelan American, I got some shit.
His name is Rafael.
My family, my parents, my sister, my extended family, all lost everything. Their work, their savings, their investments, gone.
Luckily I speak Spanish,
wiped out
yes.
by a narco-dictatorship that has held Venezuela in a death grip for over 25 years. And what happened to my family has happened to millions, and yes, millions. The Venezuelan exodus is the second largest displacement crisis on earth after Syria. This is not just a tragedy. It is one of the great humanitarian disasters of our time. But the suffering doesn't end there. This regime has jailed hundreds of political prisoners.
As they do, they are
Thousands
communists.
have been murdered simply for speaking out. More than
That's true. They've had their share of protests in the streets, and I think each time the police and the military have been deployed, and they did open fire on the protesters.
third of the population has fled. 1/3. Not for better opportunity.
You know, it's pretty bad when a third of your population decides, nah, I'm gonna dip. See ya.
These are for the American dream, but to survive, to live, because staying often means death. And while the world may see Venezuela as a collapsed state, what it is in reality is an occupied one. Our territory, our natural resources, and our institutions have been overrun by hostile foreign powers. Iranian militias, Chinese corporations, Russian intelligence, all exploiting our country with impunity.
It's kind of swapping out at this point. Instead of the Iranians, the Chinese, and the Russians, now you've got the Americans taking over. So it's sort of a pick your poison. Which do you want? Do you want the Americans, or do you want the Russian, Chinese, Iranian cartel?
Venezuela is no longer just a local crisis. It is now a geopolitical threat that endangers the entire Western Hemisphere. It has become a launch pad for an authoritarian expansion in the Americas. And in the midst of all of this, one woman has dared to lead the charge for freedom. Maria Corina Machado.
This was, I believe, the lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize and dedicated it to President Trump. Interesting fact, Venezuela used to own Colombia and Ecuador until both gained their independence. I did not know that. That is interesting. And speaking of Colombia, I think I had a tab. Oh, this was the old Brown University story. Yes. Something about... Oh, yes. Trump on Colombia's president. He has factories where he makes cocaine. He does have to watch his ass.
Mr. President, Colombian President Gustavo Petro, a couple weeks ago, he said he's got to watch his ass. And today, he said he's not concerned about anything happening to him in the aftermath of this operation. So, just what your message is about that?
Well, he has cocaine mills. He has factories where he makes cocaine. And yeah, I think I stick by my first statement. He's making cocaine. They're sending it into the United States. So he does have to watch his ass. Simple.
The Americans basically saying, yeah, you lot down there, we're done with your shit. Stop making cocaine. I say as I'm Colombian, well, my dad is born and raised in Colombia. Oh, yes, that's right. I think I remember you mentioning you'd at least part Colombian. Anyways, let's get back to the article here. Let's see. Tactical achievements don't always translate into strategic success. We read that bit already. We don't know whether Maduro's entire regime will eventually come tumbling down. We do know how involved the United States will be in a post-Maduro Venezuela. Yeah, we are still waiting for the rest of the regime to finally start sort of folding up and either attempting to flee or just surrendering. Indeed, if the goal of Maduro's removal was to cause so much chaos, fear, and consternation in Caracas that Maduro's inner circle would choose to vacate their seats and barter for a comfortable exile, it appears to have failed for the time being. Honestly based response from Trump. Indeed. Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez was on the airwaves shortly after Maduro's capture, railing against Washington for an unjust attack. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, one of Maduro's most trusted advisors, is demanding the Americans prove that Maduro is still alive. They did that already. About a quarter of a century later, it doesn't sound like Chavismo is about to fall apart. Well, for the moment, but that could change in maybe as little as 24 hours. There's also a high degree of irony that the first regime change operation in Latin America in more than 3 decades was carried out by Donald Trump, a man who fancies himself as the anti-regime change president. The phrase regime change is a dirty one for the vast majority of Americans, as well as it should be. Overthrowing governments we don't like and replacing them with ones we do rarely works out as the planners intend. See Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya as the 3 most recent case studies. And even when they do, the aftershocks can last for generations. The 1954 US-organized coup in Guatemala was one of the Central Intelligence Agency's crowning moments during the Cold War era, and yet the move helped pave the way for 3 decades of civil war that devastated the small Central American country. No one is going to shed a tear now that Maduro is gone. He was a terrible administrator. He's responsible for the arrest of countless political prisoners. He stole last year's presidential election and ran the Venezuelan economy into the ground. But in effectively greenlighting regime change, Trump opens a Pandora's box. While Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado and her supporters continue to assert that a democratic government in waiting is ready to step into the void and turn Venezuela into a pro-Western petro-state, this is the absolute best-case scenario on offer. Other contingencies include everything from a split in the Venezuelan army and the expansion of criminal groups to civil war and even worse, political dysfunction. When the shock of the US snatch and grab wears off, people would eventually have to grapple with all of this, most immediately the Venezuelan people themselves. As we've seen, most people are fairly happy with what has transpired. Let me see here. I think there was another video. Yeah, here's a good one right here. Snackle Fox, welcome in. The poster being rolled down almost echoes the toppling of the Saddam Hussein statue, doesn't it? So if the people are any indicator, they're rather happy with all of this, and it does appear that the remnants of the Maduro regime have lost their mandate to govern. So their authority likely not to be recognized by the people going forward. Let me see here. Baby Blue tweeting, "Thank God we're going back to empires and colonies because the liberal world order of globalism was a failed project and did more harm than good." Sargon of Akkad tweeting, "Yes, it's more honest to speak of empires and protectorates. The liberal fictions never existed, and it's better to just do away with lies." You know, that's the whole thing with globalism, the whole globalist American empire, that sort of thing. It was always just these sort of mealy-mouthed euphemisms, very weak-willed sort of things, just bending over backward to not call themselves empires and protectorates, which is what they really were. It's just nobody wanted to say that because everybody felt guilty about, World War II and previous wars and, more colonialism, more imperialism, and a whole lot of unnecessary white guilt that nobody really had the balls to call anything an empire anymore, which is what it really was to begin with. It's like, we might as well just start calling it a fucking empire. Let's see, Matthew Chang tweeting, can't wait to learn about the details of this one. My guess is a sizable portion of a security detail and military were cooperating for this to go off. That is possible. That is possible. It seems like a lot of doors were left unlocked, open, proverbial doors, as it were. And this does seem to have the blessing of the globalists to happen. It's like they wanted some sort of regime change operation, and Trump was sort of responding, you know, best I can do is taking out Maduro in Venezuela. They're like, yeah, all right, we can live with that. What I do know, historically, Venezuela produced the finest engineers in Latin America. Obviously, they came to a grinding halt as brain power fled the country. Last visit to the country was 2009. The infrastructure was already starting to crumble. I imagine it's all fallen apart by now. And of course, American oil companies had vast assets in the country, which I'm sure they'll want back, and investments will be pouring in to return the oil industry to previous peak production. They expect all Latin American leaders to be on their best behavior, save the Supreme Court of Brazil. Well, especially that one bald Supreme Court justice in Brazil who fancies himself as some sort of Bond villain or something like that. You know, all it takes is a couple of CIA operatives or a few members of Delta Force sneak into his house at night and just 3 to the head, 2 to the chest with some silenced rifles or pistols. Ah, hey, presto. Problem solved. Also sends a message, don't fuck with us. Which, honestly, at this rate, I don't think anybody would, in Brazil or the United States or anywhere else, I don't think they would, I don't think they really bat an eye if something like that happened. I certainly wouldn't. Let's see, Sightbringer. This is a structural rupture. The United States has just crossed a threshold that rewrites the implied global rule set. A sitting US president has announced the capture of a foreign head of state. The operation occurred without multinational authorization during a non-declared war with open admission of regime removal. Markets, global actors, adversaries are now forced to reprice not just Venezuela risk but US unpredictability, military reach, and political will. Core structural implications. This was not a proxy war, it was a global deterrence recalibration, a direct kinetic strike with surgical decapitation intent, sending an asymmetric signal to Iran, North Korea, Russia regarding Latin American alliances, and BRIC nations running alternative monetary rails. 2. U.S. sovereign dominance signal. This confirms the U.S. still operates as a rogue hegemon when it chooses. Institutions are bypassed. International law is optional. It always was. Narrative control is reclaimed through direct action. Latin American alignment cascade. Every Latin American government now has to reassess their security guarantees, their exposure to dollar-based retaliation, and their internal political risk if they lean toward authoritarian entrenchment. There's also energy and FX volatility ignition, oil markets, dollar flows, EM credit risk all just got repriced, especially Venezuelan oil assets. We don't know if they're going to be seized, privatized, or what. Let's see, sovereign CDS across LATAM, petrodollar versus petro one narratives. I've got something about that I want to take a look at in just a moment. Bitcoin, gold, non-sovereign assets gain narrative strength. Not necessarily price reaction yet, but the meta-narrative is now, if the US is willing to strike a sovereign and remove a president unilaterally, what is truly safe? This will not ignite BTC directly, but it adds to the stored narrative ignition pressure that accumulates reflexively. Temporal compression of risk markets must now price what Trump is willing to do next, how adversaries retaliate, and what line no longer exists. This shortens the perceived window of global stability. The final verdict? A global signal that the US has reactivated its hard power playbook and is broadcasting regime override capability during a peak multipolar fragmentation phase. We are in reflexive phase shift territory. History just accelerated. Damien Damore, hello, hello, how are you? Can't wait for the day Lula and Alexandra de Moraes lose everything. Here. Let me see. I had some other... here's the one that I wanted to talk about. The real reason the US is invading Venezuela goes back to a deal Henry Kissinger made with Saudi Arabia in 1974. And I'm going to explain why this is actually about the survival of the US dollar itself, not drugs, not terrorism, not democracy. This is about the petrodollar system that has kept America the dominant economic power for 50 years. Venezuela just threatened to end it. Here's what really just happened. Venezuela has 303 billion barrels of proven oil reserves. That's a lot of petro. It's the largest on Earth, more than Saudi Arabia. It's 20% of the entire world's oil. But here's the part that matters. Venezuela was actively selling that oil in Chinese yuan, not dollars. And that right there is their fatal mistake. In 2018, Venezuela announced it would free itself from the dollar. They started accepting yuan, euros, rubles, anything but dollars for oil. They were petitioning to join BRICS. They were building direct payment channels with China that bypassed SWIFT entirely. And they were sitting on enough oil to fund de-dollarization for decades. Why does this matter? Because the entire American financial system is built upon one thing, the petrodollar. In 1974, Henry Kissinger made a deal with Saudi Arabia. All oil sold globally must be priced in US dollars. In exchange, America provides military protection. This single agreement created artificial demand for dollars worldwide. Every country on Earth needs dollars to buy oil. This lets America print unlimited money while other countries work for it. It funds the military, the welfare state, the deficit spending. The petrodollar is more important to US hegemony than aircraft carriers. And here's a pattern of what happens to leaders who dare to challenge it. 2000, Saddam Hussein announces Iraq will sell oil in euros instead of dollars. 2003, Iraq invaded. Regime change. Iraq's oil immediately switched back to dollars. Saddam Hussein is lynched. The WMDs were never found because they never existed. Or if they did exist, they were moved to other countries like Syria. 2009, Gaddafi proposes a gold-backed African currency called the gold dinar for oil trade. Hillary Clinton's own leaked emails confirmed this was the primary reason for intervention. Email quote, "This gold was intended to establish a pan-African currency based on the Libyan golden dinar." 2011, NATO bombs Libya. Gaddafi is sodomized and murdered. Libya now has open slave markets. "We came, we saw, he died," Clinton cackled on camera. The gold dinar died with him. And now Maduro, with 5 times more oil than Saddam and Gaddafi combined, actively selling in yuan, building payment systems outside dollar control, petitioning to join BRICS, partnered with China, Russia, and Iran, the 3 countries leading global de-dollarization. This is not a coincidence. Challenge the petrodollar, get regime changed every single time. Stephen Miller, the United States Homeland Security Advisor, literally said it out loud 2 weeks ago. American sweat, ingenuity, and toil created the oil industry in Venezuela. Its tyrannical expropriation was the largest recorded theft of American wealth and property. He's not hiding it. They are claiming Venezuelan oil belongs to America because U.S. companies developed it 100 years ago. By this logic, every nationalized resource in history was theft. Well, logic doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's more protecting American interests. But here's the deeper problem. The petrodollar is already dying. Russia sells oil in rubles and yuan since Ukraine. Saudi Arabia is openly discussing yuan settlements. Iran has been trading in non-dollar currencies for years. China built SIPs, their own alternative to SWIFT, with 4,800 banks in 185 countries. BRICS is actively buying payment systems that bypass the dollar entirely. The M-Bridge project lets central banks settle trades instantly in local currencies. Venezuela joining BRICS with 303 billion barrels of oil would accelerate this exponentially. That's what this invasion is really about. Not stopping drugs. Venezuela accounts for less than 1% of US cocaine. Not terrorism. There's zero evidence Maduro runs a terror organization, though it wouldn't surprise anyone. Not democracy. The US supports Saudi Arabia, which has 0 elections. Well, I mean, it's an absolute monarchy. What do you expect? This is about maintaining a 50-year-old agreement that lets America print money while the world works for it. The consequences are terrifying. Russia, China, Iran already are denouncing this as armed aggression. China is Venezuela's biggest oil customer. They're losing billions. BRICS nations are watching a country get invaded for trading outside the dollar. Every nation considering de-dollarization just got the message, challenge the dollar and we will bomb you. But here's the problem. That message might accelerate de-dollarization, not stop it. Because now every country in the global south knows what happens if you threaten dollar hegemony, and they're realizing the only protection is to move faster. The timing is insane too. January 3rd, 2026, Venezuela invaded, Maduro captured. January 3rd, 1990, Panama invaded. Noriega captured. 36 years apart, almost to the day. Same playbook, same drug trafficking excuse, same real reason, control of strategic resources and trade routes. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. What happens next? Trump's press conference at Mar-a-Lago sets the narrative. U.S. oil companies are already lined up. Politico reported they've been approached about returning to Venezuela. The opposition will be installed. Oil will flow in dollars again. Venezuela becomes another Iraq, another Libya. Only maybe a better outcome this time? Less shit? Who knows? But here's what no one's asking. What happens when you can no longer bomb your way to dollar dominance? When China has enough economic leverage to retaliate? Don't know if they ever will, to be honest. When BRICS controls 40% of global GDP and says no more dollars. When the world realizes the petrodollar is maintained by violence. I mean, it always was. Anyone who was pretending otherwise, they were deluding themselves. And well, just getting ready to tackle the path of pain and Hollow Knight. Best of luck to you. America just showed its hand. The question is whether the rest of the world folds or calls the bluff. Most of the rest of the world are probably going to fold. Because they don't want to get the shit bombed out of them. Because this invasion is an admission that the dollar can no longer compete on its own merits. When you have to bomb countries to keep them using your currency, the currency is already dying. Venezuela is not the beginning, it is the desperate end. Let me see, there were a few other things about this, and then I think we can move on. Oh yes, Congressman Jim McGovern, tweeting out, without authorization from Congress, with the vast majority of Americans opposed to military action, Trump just launched an unjustified illegal strike on Venezuela. He says we don't have enough money for healthcare for Americans, but somehow we have unlimited funds for war. To which Data Republican replied, right, because the responsible path would have been to funnel billions quietly and indefinitely through Freedom House, the Open Society, the National Endowment for Democracy, the RAND Corporation, RTI, and the rest. Buy the media, subsidize the protesters, pick a color scheme, slap a name like Daisy Revolution on it, and drag the process out for years. Eventually Maduro exits as equally corrupt but pro-Western successor takes over, everyone involved declares victory, and 2 years later it's still a communist dictatorship. Just a familiar regime change theater that congratulates itself for procedure while delivering the same non-existent outcome. Your new world order is over. Keep crying. Well, yeah, I think we just saw the proper way to do it. Chat. Don't talk about it. Just do it. Tell us about it afterwards. And as we've seen, it's energized supporters, and it's left critics looking and sounding completely impotent. Anyway, that's a big thing that's been happening overnight in the world. And I think on that note, we're good to jump into our stream VC. And any of you who are part of the Castle Rexworth Discord who wish to join, you're more than welcome to. There's going to be a community react to. Now we've got the serious stuff out of the way, we can start talking about some more fun things. Things related to travel, to cars, to other cool things. So, I'm there in the Stream VC Discord right now. And those of you who are part of the Castle Rexworth Discord, you are free to pop in as well. Let me just make sure I've got the Discord collab overlay set up properly. There we go. All right, lovely. And whilst we wait for people to join in,